This podcast will dive into ways you can serve your customers how they want, with real-world examples and actionable steps that put you ahead of major events, TikTok-type incidents, market trends, and customer behaviours. I'm Gemma Milne, I'm a tech writer, and I'm going to be chatting proactive customer service in the era of TikTok effects with Microsoft and Avtex. Like TikTok, customer service is made up of many moments, some more impactful than others. What's clear is that no organisation should wait for unplanned events to understand how you enhance your customer's experience. Events like a recent TikTok post that featured ocean spray juice became a viral video phenomenon and boost for that company. Market trends that shift behaviours, a new product or solution launches, or even a crisis can set off a spiralling effect, either good or bad. In the on-demand, hyper-connected world we live in, personalised customer experience reigns king for attracting and retaining customers. Across all industries, whether that's B2B or B2C, customers expect their experiences with you to be instant, tailored, and on their terms. Legacy one-size-fits-all approaches to customer service are being surpassed at a record pace by omni-channel self-service, contextual, and personalised experiences. Experiences that deliver exactly the right touch point, be it offering help, a promotion, or an inspiring idea at exactly the right time and in the right channel. When every planned and unplanned customer interaction is a chance to win or lose across the customer journey, organisations without a proactive and agile approach risk losing their foothold in the marketplace. Setting your organisation up for success in a step-by-step way to handle challenges and scale your business longer term is easier than you think. Carl, Tom, thank you so much for joining me to chat today about proactive customer service in the era of TikTok effects. Before we get into that though, I'd love to get a little bit of an introduction from each of you. So Tom, let's start with you. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me here. So my name is Tom Yang. I'm the Global Sales Director for the Dynamics Customer Suite here at Microsoft. And my job is really just to work with our customers around the world to find the best path, to find the best solution, and give their customers an outcome, right? So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming and joining us, Tom. And you, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Carl Phoenix. I'm Director of Sales Engineering at Avtex, who is one of Microsoft's key partners. We've been Inner Circle and Gold Partner with them for a number of years, and we work closely with them in implementing customer service implementations on their platform.
Amazing. Thank you both for joining us today. It's going to be a great discussion. So I mentioned the title of discussion already, proactive customer service in the era of TikTok effects. Maybe let's just start with talking about what do we even mean by the era of TikTok effects. Tom, I'm going to come to you first. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I think, one of the reasons that we kind of went with that is really just the rising customer expectations, but also the rate at which they change, right? The expectations change, the agility of organizations to respond change. And it's just, I think, this hyper-personalized, hyper-consumer, hyper-focused kind of way of delivering service. I think, a lot of the context here is that, hey, look, people have not really had a choice before, right? So, we've all waited in queues, we've all waited on the phone. And, personally, I kind of am silently fuming while I'm doing that. But it's like, okay, this is the expectation. This is the service that's delivered, but no more, right? And I think especially in today's world, and even in the events in the last few quarters, it's, look, there are so many choices out there. There are brands that are willing to work with you. So my expectation as a consumer, as a customer, have dramatically risen, and I can go find many brands to go meet that. If you're an organization that is not able to cater to that, you're not going to be in business much longer. So I think, that's a lot of the foundation, if you will, for, hey, look, we've got to get proactive, predictive. How do we serve our customers towards the outcomes now in this kind of new era, right?
And Carl, let's hear a little bit from you as well. What does this era mean for you? Perhaps some examples of this shift in customer expectation that Tom's alluding to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk about TikTok, what we really are talking about is the unprecedented exposure that your brand and your company can have, both in a positive and a negative light, through nothing that you saw coming. And how do you react as an organization to deal with that, right? If Chrissy Teigen tweets about your brand, suddenly there's millions of people that are seeing something on a Wednesday morning that you had no line of sight. Traditionally, When we think about customer service exploding, it's through things that you either anticipate because of it's a seasonal rush in your business, or it's some sort of sales promotion tied to something that you have coordinated with sales. But in this era where there's a tweet or a YouTube video getting put out there unknown to you, you need to be able to react and deal with that, and have the technical, the technical answers to business outcomes that you're looking for in order to provide the right service for your customers. And the unknown is what we're trying to plan for.
And what do we mean when we're talking about, I guess, what the customers are wanting, what they're expecting? Is it, the ability to immediately speak to someone on the phone? Is it the ability to go buy it and it never be out of stock? Is it, personalization, knowing exactly what I want when I want it? Give us a little bit of context as to what customers are expecting right now. Tom, let's start with you.
For me, I think I always start with the end in mind, which is the customer wants a product or a service. They want an outcome, right? And I think the reason I start there is if we look at technology, which it invariably comes back to, especially over the years, you could argue, was the technology good or not? Let's take IVR, the phone tree, the classic press 1, press 2, press 3. What that did was to help the customer, in this case, navigate the organization to say, let me get you to the right person. But if I take a step back and look at that, what does that technology do? That technology guides, it's meant to route you, but it doesn't actually solve your problem. It's not meant to. And so then as we see the evolution of that to now things like what we call the interactive virtual agent, right? And let's stay away from industry terms, but basically to say, if I make a call and I have the ability to talk to a virtual agent, the premise of that technology is that it can potentially solve the customer's problem right then and there. It's not meant to be routing, it's meant to be solving, if that makes sense, right? So again, at the high level, that's it to me is all of this technology is a means to an end to get the customer outcome faster, whether that's a product, a service, or something that they want.
And Carl, do you want to add anything to that?
I think just to kind of add on top of that, I think the key term that the customers are looking for is they're looking for context to be used. They want the ability, right, to provide the context, and more, what they're looking for is that context to be passively given rather than a mandatory input. Tom's talking about IVR, press 1, press 2. It's still a guide. It doesn't solve their problem. But with the addition of technology, understanding context of why are you here? Go beyond that. Well, who are you? What product do you already own? Do I know that you have had an order that was supposed to be shipped to you? All of this information, the expectation from the customer is that you already know this. I'm already engaged with you, so help me. And we see this time and time again with the advancements in how we're interacting with organizations. We communicate, and those that are doing it best, they have an answer as soon as somebody reaches out. Are you talking about this order that we know we have with you? And that's the expectation, right? They have an outcome, as Tom said, and they want to be able to get to that outcome. And it's about saying, I don't have to tell you everything about me because we have a relationship. I'm your customer. And so you should be able to use the information that you have about me contextually so that we can cut to that outcome as soon as possible.
You alluded there, Carl, to, getting it right, in examples of that, which we're going to touch on in a minute, because I think it's important to kind of hear what sort of best practice looks like. But before that, something you mentioned as well was context, being able to understand the context in which this question is come up, or this demand or order or whatever it is. And going back to this initial idea of the TikTok effect, Chrissy Teigen tweeting about something and suddenly demand spiking, that's also context, right? The context in which things change. But how do you plan for that? Because that's a pretty unplannable event, unless of course Chrissy is being hired as an influencer to help with your sales campaign. So Carla, I will stick with you. I would love to hear a little bit about what does it mean to plan and take into context these events which ultimately can't really plan around.
I think it all really starts for me with this concept of who your customer is and who your demographic is. We talk to organizations a lot that they have silos of their customer base and they know where they sit. right? If they are a specific organization catered at care homes, parents and children, and dealing with a certain demographic, they understand how people like to communicate with them. And then you've got other brands, and it's a wide array of different people and consumers of different ages and different demographics. How do you plan? Well, I think if you look at your customer base and you look at who your organization is expecting to engage with, and you reflect on the channels of communication that you facilitate today to deal with customer service, I think that's a really great place to start. Because if you have limited channels of communication, when we think about omnichannel, the ability for someone to be texting you, engaging with you on social media, picking up the phone, having a live chat, if there are gaps in your channels of communication, and yet when you look at your customer base, the expectations in the industry, to Tom's point at the start, if their expectation right, is that they're able to interact with you in this way, then you're going to have some serious gaps in your response to customer service activities. Whereas if you can cover that base in terms of the way that your customers want to get in touch, I think that's the lowest hanging fruit to a good customer service engagement, is being able to communicate with your customers in a way that makes sense for them. Right? Are they on the bus? Are they at work? Are they at home? Is it midnight? Right? What is all of the reasons why you're going to be wanting to communicate, and through what channels? And are you able to offer that to people? Or are you funneling them into something that, 50% of them don't want to do? They're already frustrated that they have to be on hold when they really want to have a live chat.
And Tom, from your perspective, what does that mean then from an IT play, from thinking about how you scale infrastructure for these, unforeseen events? Obviously, you already, as Carl said, you've done that work to understand precisely how customers expect to engage and want to engage, and perhaps how they might feel at certain points in that journey. But at the end of the day, if you do have an unforeseen event, whether it's a TikTok video or something like a global pandemic, for instance, you still need to be able to react to these events. So what does that mean from an infrastructure, or from a staff onboarding, or rolling out of content really quickly? Talk us through some of those kind of reactionary things that you can plan for the unplannable.
Sure. And I think a couple of things come to mind. I think first, definitely the goal is on what Carl shared, which is let's make sure that we can, be in touch, communicate with our customers. That always is priority. If I look at how you, to your point, plan for the unplannable. First, I think everybody would love for Chrissy Teigen to tweet about them, but we know that's not priority. But whatever happens there, I think I saw this, right, which is through COVID and through these business interruptions that we've seen, the brands that were very successful and arguably, dramatically increased their market share, increased their revenue, et cetera, weren't necessarily ones that simply responded reactively when COVID hit. They were the brands that were already prepared, even though they could never have foreseen something like COVID. My point is that, I think Carl made this earlier too, what you do today outside of an emergency or, some other situation sets you up for reaction there, right? So it's not all about just being reactive, but rather having the mindset. Again, you're never going to know what's going to come up when spikes come up, when certain world events come up, but having the wherewithal and the foundation to prepare for that is going to make all the difference. So now let's talk about, what does that mean? I think there's the stereotypical things that we can talk about in terms of, okay, I've got to have a solution that works anywhere, everywhere, 24/7, isn't bound by hardware or certain locations. I think that's all good. I think a couple things that stand out to me are, first, as simple as, do you have a good picture of your operations? We're talking about customer service here, right? Let's just say within the realm of contact center. It's surprising to me when I ask that question with a lot of customers, which is, and I know it sounds simple, but do you have a good picture of your operations? And sometimes the answer comes back yes. Oftentimes it comes back no. Even in the yes, though, when you drill down, it's like, okay, so answer this. Can you tell me your volumes across channels? But more importantly, can you tell me the difference across channels? For example, the same topic. Is it better performant on voice or better performant on digital? Assuming that you have all those channels, right? But those are the kinds of things, because beyond just this, the metrics that you're getting right there, what it tells us is there capability for you to shift, to adjust, to respond. So let's say this. If you have a voice channel and you have digital channels, what you will invariably see, and we see this across our own business, across many of our customers, is there are certain topics of conversation. And you can think of these topics as issues or questions that a customer has, right? Something, some intent that the customer is trying to engage with us. You will see there are dramatic differences between, let's say, this same topic when it's done on voice and when it's done on digital. I use that as a simple example. But the reason I say that is I think what we often see is many organizations kind of go in and say, okay, I have voice as a channel. I want to do digital. So I want to start opening up my business to basically do everything on digital. Well, no, you shouldn't, because guess what? There are some topics that just don't translate to digital. But do you have the ability to go look at it? That, for me, I think drives a lot of the foundational stuff for what we talk about in terms of, can you react to spikes? Well, if you don't have a good picture of your operations in the first place, how do you react, right? And the point of reacting is to make sure that we're continuing to provide the best customer experience, the highest satisfaction, the most customer outcome on those channels. So again, that's why I come to, if I have a topic and I know that it's better done on voice than on digital, then I'm going to go ahead and suggest that my customers do that on voice as much as possible. But other topics that are better done through digital, I'm going to suggest that they do it through digital. So at the same time that we're accounting for the channels of engagement that we can engage our customers on, it's also incumbent on us, every one of us as a brand, as an organization, to help the customers understand, look, it's actually just better for you to engage here. Here's why, et cetera, if that makes sense, right? But the underlying foundation starts with, you've got to have that picture, that clear picture of what your operations look like.
Absolutely. And I think it ties back to that point that Carl was saying, where it's understanding how your customers engage with you, what it is that you actually do as a business, and what it is people expect from you, and doing, I guess, the basics or the low-hanging fruit before you do anything a bit more fancy. But let's talk a little bit about some of these, I guess, success stories where things have been done, whether it is basic interventions or something a bit more fancy, for lack of a better word, where different kind of companies and different kind of sectors have been able to rethink their approach to customer experience and be able to, I guess, meet those expectations of this TikTok era that we talk about. So, Carl, let's start with you. I'd love to hear some examples from perhaps some different industries of where you think people are getting it right.
Sure. And I mean, let's use the world event that we've all just had to live through, right? Which is, COVID and the disruption that's brought. I think, one customer, and there's so many, one customer that comes to mind though is Australian Red Cross. And I think for them, with COVID, of course, COVID is let's call it one additional thing that they have to help the community with on top of what they're already doing. But even so, they had to respond to COVID to say, okay, as part of the Australia Red Cross, they're part of the community, working with the government and other organizations that actually were trying to outreach to the elderly, to the vulnerable. And so for them, it was to say, how do we almost overnight, in this case, within 5 or 6 days, stand up a brand new team of hundreds that are making, thousands and thousands of calls outbound to reach the vulnerable, to reach the elderly. And so using the technology here in a really agile manner, again, within a matter of days, standing up that entire ecosystem to be able to support this new need that they have, right? That, I think, is an example of saying it's not only just the technology, but their mentality to say, we have something that's come up, we need to respond to it, right? Here's the outcome that we're trying to get, and here's the technology that we can use to do this very rapidly. I mean, 5 days for a brand new kind of end-to-end team and system and solution and process and people and process and technology and all of that, I think is pretty amazing. So.
Awesome, Tom. That was brilliant. Carl, we've talked a lot about, context and personalization as a result of context. I wonder if you have a customer example you can talk about where they've really lent into that idea of personalizing around context successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a number of different customers in different verticals, but they seem to all be able to take huge advantage of providing that personalization and that context. In the sort of financial space, with credit unions, customers being able to derive exactly what someone's local branch is, and being able to provide that information to an agent is really a great, simple way of creating that personalization. Which helps them understand how they serve them better. And then in some other examples, we've got some customers that are dealing with people who are looking for replacement parts, right? They're in the sort of the manufacturing, but also B2C product. And the customers' engagements with them is oftentimes about finding their local dealer or finding their local parts. And the ability that we've had with them to personalize based on the incoming request, what is the geolocation of it, what is their zip code, and being able to see that into the actual system itself so that the agent that is dealing with it, the interaction, is able to provide that real-time feedback as to what their local sort of their closest solution, which gets back to providing these outcomes. And the customer experience that we have seen improve by that is to say, I don't really want to triage with you. I want to improve the customer experience by saying, we already know where you are or where you're requesting from. We have your address. We know your zip code. So being able to personalize the interaction and provide the right suggestions back is a huge improvement in customer experience through personalization.
Awesome, Carl. Thank you. Okay. Tom, I wonder if there's also an example you can share with us, a sort of customer success story around moving to the cloud, for instance, and how that's really impacted customer service and creating brilliant customer experiences.
Sure. I think, moving to the cloud, there's the standard things, if you will, that people understand, which I won't cover, TCO and all that. But I think for me, one of the biggest and best examples is where you can use the technologies that are available to you on the cloud to just give a better customer experience, right? So Tivoli, which is an amusement park in Copenhagen, they're the second oldest in the world, I believe, continually running theme parks. And for them, like many other industries and businesses, they have gone from the point in time purchase, right, which used to be basically, hey, everybody buys a ticket when you come in here once, twice, 3 times a year, to moving to a subscription program. And I think we all know of many organizations across industries that have done that. Well, what's the most important thing in a subscription program? It's to keep customers from churning. They have to feel, they have to know, they have to see that they're getting value out of paying this subscription. So the way that you engage the customers has changed as well, right? Because think about it, if you're there point in time, your whole goal is to get them to show up as many times as possible to that amusement park. But if they're on a subscription program, it's now about saying, well, they can come as many times as they want. Now it's about showing them value almost every day to keep that in their mind that, hey, Tivoli is here for your needs in this space. And so when you talk about a technology perspective, moving from on-prem, where really you're looking at the data for a customer, you're looking at the record for a customer, and it's really just a form, right? You might as well print it out on a piece of paper, where if you start to move to the cloud and unlock the technologies there, what do you got? Now you're getting predictive, proactive. You're saying, not only can I see the picture of this customer, but I'm going to use the information that I have, that they let me use, that they let me collect, to make their experience a better one. If I can start to read out and to synthesize this information and say, hey, look, this customer, Tom, really likes doing this at our amusement park. Let me craft offers and proactive, coupons or discounts or whatever it is, specific to his interests, his wants, his needs. That's this type of thing that you can unlock in a cloud environment that you almost cannot do simply on-prem, right? So again, the capacity for organizations to deliver on their customers' expectations, experiences, and outcomes is just, it can't be done on-prem. And you can only do it by utilizing these technologies in the cloud.
Awesome, Tom. That was great. Okay. We talk a lot about, customer service insights and trends and things that we're kind of understanding from a data perspective, whether that's about customers or from other examples of how customer service is being done in brilliant ways around the world. Carl, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about perhaps an example of where these insights, these trends have been used to create that great customer experience.
Yeah, I think with customer service insights, it's not really any different in terms of the technology. It's about saying, hey, we're having a lot of communications. Let's try to consolidate those and try to analyze the commonality. So customer service insights at its core is about saying, hey, we're having lots of interactions every single day across multiple different channels. And let's try to understand some of the commonality and trends. And sometimes that's topics, right? It's understanding, wow, we're getting a lot of questions about this particular product or this particular sort of delivery area. Maybe there's a problem that we need to look into there, right? One of our suppliers is having issues and we're having that roll-on effect. And we're picking that up through the insights from our customer service interactions and being able to react to them. We've seen a number of different customers that are able to spot those trends based on some keywords around product name, product model numbers, and being able to understand things that are out there in their consumer base that they need to go and either create some sort of press release around or put some more knowledge and self-service content around to try to triage those type of incoming inquiries. And then at the other side of things, you're also able through the customer service insights to get a gauge on the quality, right? Is there a dip in the quality of the interactions that we're having with our customers? Why is that? What's exactly going on? And being able to trace that back and say, we've got a skeleton staff on this week because it's the holidays, and being able to try to pinpoint those things. Or, hey, we rolled out this new process for customer service resolution. Is that having a positive impact, and we're seeing a great trend in the CSAT scores, or is it having something negative? It's really hard to speak to everybody who works in customer service, have a deep dive with them and understand, hey, who did you talk to today? What kind of things did you talk about? Was it positive? Was it negative? But the customer service insights is evaluating all of those interactions and then consolidating it into insights that you can have those meaningful conversations about. Right? Again, being able to dive in and talk to the people who work on the front lines and agents and take some of their anecdotal feedback and match it up with the insights that you're getting as well.
Awesome, Carl. That was brilliant. This is for you, Tom. So we've obviously focused specifically on the customer service function and creating brilliant customer experience through customer service and enhancing. What does it mean to enhance or not enhance customer service with respect to what happens in other places in the business, Tom?
I think, and this is the, pie in the sky, right? I think the best organizations are ones who are blending their teams, maybe not from a structure perspective, but from a goal perspective to say, the reality is that whether you're in sales, service, marketing, even product, you're all there to serve the customer, right? So my point is that, I think to answer your question, there absolutely is a crossover. And the more you can do that, the better. Because again, as an organization, what's your unique potential? What are you there to do in the market? And that should stem every single thing you do with a customer, whether you're marketing to them, whether you're selling to them, whether you're servicing them, et cetera. For example, let's take voice. I call voice kind of an analog channel because for the most part, most organizations are not able to use the insights, the data that come from voice. So voice is for most organizations still the biggest channel. And sometimes this is totaling millions of hours of calls a month for some organizations, yet you're getting very, very little that you can glean from that. From a quality perspective, what's the average for you listening to your recordings? Less than 1%. So that's 99+% of recordings that are not being used. And by the way, even when they are used, most often they're used for quality control. But what is it not being used for is gleaning all the insights that you get from these customer conversations. I'll give you an example, right? If I'm a manufacturer, what do I want to know? I want to know when my customer brings up a competitor and says, well, boy, these guys do it so much easier. That information usually is not shared because it's not known. So the whole point is, how do we free up the data? How do we make all this information meaningful? Because you bet that if you're the returns department or even the product department, you should want to know about all that stuff that's being said because it allows you to do your job better. The more that we can start to utilize the information, the insights that we glean from service across the rest of our business and vice versa, the better it all is. And so that's why for us at Microsoft, we see a truly connected kind of customer journey orchestration, if you will, right? To say, look, your campaigns that you send out to a customer should always be informed by the service that they do. Vice versa, right? The service that you do should always be informed by the campaigns that you sent out, by the information you've gleaned there, by the interest that you can capture. If you don't do that, you are letting your competitors get ahead of you. And again, if you're a for-profit, that's going to make or break your business over the course of years. And if you're not for profit, the customer expectations are so great that you will consistently get shut down in CSAT, in surveys and reviews if you also aren't delivering that akin to if you were a for-profit organization, right?
To follow on what you're saying, Tom, we've seen some of the biggest wins for some of our organizations has really been around an investment in the employee experience, the agent experience, putting tools in front of them, to your point, that allow them to recognize sentiment changes and also give them some line of sight. It's one of the big asks that we see. People who are dealing with emails, for example, that are coming in or chats that are coming in, we do sentiment analysis with some organizations to look at the text and understand, is this an angry email? Is it a delight email? And how can we react to those things? And what is your mindset as you go into that interaction? At the same time, we provide contextual pointers for our customers. And this is something that those that are doing it best have really invested in, which is to say, if I'm dealing with a customer, here are some things that I should show you. You should show, what's the name of the person who last spoke to this customer, right? What was that interaction about? The ability to diffuse a situation by showing that you understand that they spoke to Simon, right? I know that you spoke to Simon. Hey, I see you're speaking to Simon about this. Just those little snippets of information that are put in there. And that's really where it comes to not only investing in your customer's experience, but investing in your employee experience with the tools that they're given has such ramifications for the experience for the customer as well.
So let's build on the key word that you said a few times there in your answer, Carl, which is investing. And I think when we talk about mindset shifts and, trying new things, making things better, an investment is required, whether it's financial, time-based, or even just trying to get people on board with change, with new systems or new ways of doing things. So how can we think about this idea of switching things up, trying to make things better without it feeling like this big, scary / not doable investment of money, time, and mindset? Carl, let's start with you.
And I think what's really important is being able to understand that creating an organization that is invested in self-service and upfront knowledge sharing, what it's doing is it's freeing up your customer service organization to have those more meaningful conversations instead of being constantly rushing to get people on or off the phone or on or off a live chat. And so the way to think about that is really to think about how freeing up some of the tedium and the tedious interactions can really lead to more meaningful interactions. I think there's a couple of terms that we use consistently with our customers, which is, we talk about proof of concept and we talk about pilots. And I think that rather than a big bang explosion of all of this new technology, what we see people doing is really sort of carving off some people inside their organization who they feel are pushing towards something that they want to take on, looking for their buy-in to start a pilot or a proof of concept, and being able to invest in a smaller subset of the workforce to really kick the tires on things and see how it's going. And what we've actually seen is this blend of the ability to implement omnichannel in small subsets. So, for example, we want to put a virtual agent bot into our customers' experience, but we don't want to just put it everywhere. Okay, well, we have the capability to say it's only going to appear here for these customers in this subset. When we traditionally think about things in brick and mortar, if you're trying out something with your customers, don't put it into every store. Just take a subset of them and see how customers are interacting. It's the same with the customer service at a digital or through contact center. Just being able to take that small snippet and understand how it's working. I think there are lots of lessons learned through those type of processes where you can understand, wow, this is going to have a huge impact across our organization. We should really invest in it in these meaningful ways. Or listen, we understand that the value is here, but it looks like it's only going to be valuable if we do X, Y, and Z. And so you make those discoveries in small incremental amounts and then you build on them. And I think that's really the best way to approach some of this is to say, listen, let's start small, and we constantly are talking about crawl, walk, and run in our organization as we talk with customers. And nobody's going to be successful when they just try to run at a problem. You need to start crawling and see exactly where the wins are.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of leads into my final question that I have for the pair of you. And Tom, I'll start with you on this one, because I think, Carl, you've kind of alluded to your answer, which is, what's the next step? What can people who are listening, who have hopefully been convinced by what you're saying about the importance of doing this and how doable it can be, to use the word fancy, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be these smaller steps that can be hugely impactful. But yeah, what would be this next step? What can people do right now to really move their customer experience forward in this TikTok era, as we keep mentioning? Tom, let's begin with you.
I think, there are a lot of things that you can do there. I think one is, what I would say is, get a handle on the outcomes that you're trying to deliver. I think what I mean by that is, every organization, in my opinion, has what we call a unique potential. And whether you're selling widgets or providing services, even if you have 12 different competitors doing so, what is your unique potential? Because without that, what are you doing in the market? And I guess the reason I start with that is, if you don't have the ability to kind of define at an organization level, or even at a team level, what do we want to be known for? What are we here to do? Then it's kind of challenging, right? Because that actually cascades a lot of these different things. When we talked about in terms of, okay, how you communicate, how proactive you are, the kind of brand you are. Well, guess what that stems from? That stems from your kind of, existence in the market, whether you're for profit or not, to say, what are we here to do? Once you establish that I think helps you kind of start to bake out a thought process of, okay, well, what are the things that we want to tackle first? Then you start to say, well, how do we start to work with organizations like, for example, Avtex in this case, who can guide us not only on the technology, because that's one piece of it, but it's all people, process, technology. I think to what Carl said before, you've got to be able to have, let's call it a partner in crime in this case, to invest in the areas and to identify the areas that your organization should go into, right? So I think, again, technology is one aspect of it. What virtual agent technology do you use? What CRM do you use? What knowledge do you use? That's all and good, but how do you apply those? Where do you apply those first? So knowing what kind of organization you want to be, where should you start? What has the most ROI? I think it's very, I suppose, basic in that sense, which is know who you are and go find somebody who can help you make the most of who you are.
Awesome, Tom. Thank you for that. And Carl, what would be your next step for those listening?
I agree with Tom. Just get moving, I think, in the right direction and do some analysis is really the first step. To be very specific, I think that there are a lot of things that we can look at when we talk to organizations, and we can pinpoint areas that are potential huge advantages to them, or disadvantages when things blow up in a negative sense, right? If you have X 100,000 number of followers on Twitter and have no social media customer service plan, that's a problem waiting to happen, right? Or it's an opportunity that you haven't embraced yet. You can flip both sides of the coin. And understanding what your growth mindset is in terms of your business outcomes for your customer service. Are you missing a demographic from a sales perspective? And how does that tie back to the fact that you don't have a good customer service related to that demographic of people who want to communicate in that way? Tom started this entire conversation off by talking about how we have choice and we can drop an organization that is helping us with something and say, hey, I'm going to go find somebody else, a company over here who does it better. And so being able to look at your competitors, understand what they provide, what the expectation is of the consumer, and really looking at some of the areas where there are gaps, and realizing that sometimes to move the needle, it doesn't take a lot. But the low-hanging fruit and the return on investment in some of these, it's just waiting to happen. Microsoft are developing technologies to solve these problems, and there are many, many technical solutions out there. It's really a case of just trying to align your business outcomes and your needs, and understanding who you are in the marketplace to go out and embrace them. And I think that if there's one thing that is significantly changed over the last number of years, it is the level of entry that it takes to use this technology. Organizations like Microsoft understand that if people are going to use their technology, then it needs to be easy to adopt and embrace and use. And so they've invested heavily in that. And I think it's time for companies to be able to step up and take on things that maybe 3 to 5 years ago, a bot would have been a scary word, for helping their customers. But it's really part of the day-to-day for many people now.
Amazing. I think that's a lovely, hopeful note to end on, and hopefully for those listening, lots of tips and directions and questions there that hopefully can get people moving forward in, as you guys say, the right direction. So Carl, Tom, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us all of your candid advice and answers and top tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks very much for tuning in to our conversation. Now, if you're wondering where do you go from here to make these proactive customer service strategies work in a way that's best for you, a Microsoft Catalyst workshop as your next step could identify the right short-term versus long-term needs and end with a clear, actionable roadmap of how they can help you reach your business goals. Avtex draws on its industry expertise, their Microsoft partnership, and a joint proven methodology to assess your needs and identify the top priorities that will make the most customer service impact in an incremental, thoughtful way.